morning, good afternoon, good evening. The nation of Zimbabwe has been galvanized by Mnangagwa ED2030. If the truth be said, this call for him to extend his stay in power beyond 2028 started soon after the 2023 elections. And it has remained on the national agenda ever since. And everything points to it's going to remain there for a long time yet. The people of Zimbabwe are being asked to fight to stop this ED2030 or else fight to make sure that Zanu PF does not get away with rigged 2028 elections. I think we are being asked here whether we are smart enough to make the rational choice. That is the big question. Are the people of Zimbabwe rational enough to pick which fight to pick up and end their own suffering? That is really the big question here. I would like to open up the discussion by playing a video clip of Tendai Biti giving his own take on this ED2030.
That is to say, 2/3 in the National Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate. It must then go to a referendum, because it is a bill altering term limits in the country. The referendum is a simple process, Baba. The referendum simply asks whether you are saying yes or no. Because we are going to campaign and live in the mountains to get that no vote. There's a second problem. The Constitution then says, when you change this Constitution and you remove the term limits, it doesn't benefit the incumbent.
It benefits the next.
It benefits the next. But you can change that provision.
Same process.
Yeah, we call it the Abdoulaye Wade provision. Because President Abdoulaye Wade amended the Constitution for a third time, and Senegalese said, it can't benefit you. And he lost at that stage. And that's why President Sall came in. And as fat as Yazid, as you know, President Macky Sall also tried to change the Constitution to benefit him. Yet he came through a process of rejecting a third term agenda. Right. That's why you can't trust people. But anyway, to come back to the legal process. Another referendum is required now to change the constitutional provision that says you can't benefit. That's when we will see Trababala's true colors, because all along you'll be saying, I don't want Vandova Kuda. Now when he says, now the Akuda, the constitution has to go to a referendum for the second time. Baba, pakaipa. Tusangana makomo, tusangana kwa Chendabwe, tusangana ku Lotito, tusangana ku Eskodini, tusangana ku Binga, tusangana ku Cholocho. He can't win those referendums. He cannot win those referendums.
Okay.
So to put it very crudely, the idea of a third term agenda is fraught with such legal landmines that you would have to be so ambitious, so insane, so drunk or both to ever think that it can actually carry out and see the light of the day?
Well, that's a mouthful. Just to our listeners out there, if you want to join us, please use the link at the bottom of your screen there, the StreamYard link, and we'll be able to add you to the platform and join in the discussion. What we'd like to do this evening is to structure the discussion in this way. We'd like to talk of the advantages of fighting to end or to stop ED extending his stay in office beyond 2028. We want to hear the advantages and then the disadvantages. But we'll also want to hear the advantages of fighting to stop ZANU PF rigging 2028 elections and getting away with it. We want to hear the advantages and the disadvantages. And then at the end of the evening, we'll compare and hopefully come to a conclusion what will be in the best interest of Zimbabwe to do. So, Ben, I don't know whether you would want to start. You can start any way you want, advantages or disadvantages of either side.
Thank you. Good day to you and good day to our viewers. You know, I've been listening to different advocates within Zimbabwe, and I also tried to do a bit of research online. And this 2030 is pretty difficult for ZANU PF to do, you know, the extension. You know, it's stopping ED 2030 is the easy part. Compared between the two, it's pretty easy because it's fraught with so much, you know, difficulties for ED to actually get away with it. So this is why you have found there are now so many political players wanting to get involved with the easy part. You know, like, you know, Honorable Tendai, I think he explained, you know, the obstacles that have to be, you know, overcome for them to actually do, and it's very difficult. Mathematically, it's very difficult for ED to continue until 2030. It's not impossible, but it's extremely difficult. So I think this is why you find the opposition, many opposition, even the ones that had failed, the likes of Monzura that, you know, had gone harsh, they are now getting, you know, airtime and people are listening. It's the easy part.
Well, I would like to remind the people that ED 2030 started soon after the 2023 elections. What happened in the 2023 elections is that SADC condemned that process as flawed and illegal. So ED 2030 was introduced to divert attention away from the fact that the regime was illegitimate. So in terms of the advantages of fighting to end the ED 2030, That is one of the advantages, sorry, of not fighting ED2030, the disadvantages. If you fight it, you're only responding to the decoy. That is not in your interest, in the national interest. Why are you fighting a decoy when the real fight is there to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections? So in this case here, we can list it among, as we wish, in fact, we can list it as the advantages of fighting to stop Zanu PF rigging the 2028 elections and getting away with it, is because if we fight ED 2030, we are fighting a decoy. The real fight is stopping Zanu PF rigging 2028 and getting away with it.
I've always said it really doesn't make any sense where we are fighting to stop ED 2030 and allowing 2028 to continue as things stand. I mean, my reference point is the 2023 elections. From the reports that we got from our observers, not just SADC, all our observers said that our elections did not measure up to international standards. They did not measure up to our constitution, which means the constitution was violated. Just the same way 2030 will violate the constitution. So we have a problem there. And if we do not fix that problem, 2028 will be another violation of the constitution. So here we are saying that we want to stop a violation in 2030, but totally ignoring the violation that is going to happen in 2028. That to me really doesn't make any sense at all. You don't want something that is further, but you're comfortable with a violation that is closer. So what benefit is it to us that we are stopping 2030 only to get robbed in 2028? It really doesn't make any sense.
I'd like to play a video clip of Professor Zvamomuita. He is speaking on the same issue, but from a slightly different angle to Tendai Biti.
Term limits are actually imposed to limit very good presidents. In fact, that is the reason for term limits. Term limits were invented to ensure that a person would not remain in office merely because they are doing well. That's if you go to the country that did that first and foremost, the Americans. 4 years, they don't look at how good a president is, which is why some of the best presidents in that country have had to leave. So term limits are for good presidents. You don't need a term limit for a poor president who obviously be removed in an election. So that's the first point to note. Then in terms of why we are saying it's impossible, of course, they have to go through the parliamentary process. Let's assume that they get a 2/3 majority to amend the provision that says that the president's term is 5 years. They will then need a referendum. But that referendum depends on what it is that they are proposing. If they are proposing that a president will remain in office by merely extending the term, they are not even allowed to make that proposal. It will still be unconstitutional. Parliament itself cannot do so. So it depends on what they are doing. I'm saying President Mnangagwa was elected to serve up to 2028. And the people who did that were the people, not a political party or parliament. Parliament was also elected at the same time. So regarding getting a mandate from the people, Parliament and the President, they stand at the same level. No one can say, like the president cannot simply say, I want to extend the term of parliament. That is not possible. Nor can parliament say, I want to extend the term in office of the president. They must all allow a new election in 2028. So that kind of proposal cannot even be taken to a referendum. The only proposal that can be taken to a referendum is where you want to say that perhaps you want to increase that from now on, presidents will serve for 7 years or for 8 years or for whatever. That will have to be obviously be taken to a referendum. Then there's a provision, everyone knows it, which says that whatever amendments are made, they cannot benefit the president or the person who is in office at the time. That will be another impediment.
Well, I think Professor Maduka has got a point. But the point I would like to emphasize here is, again, on the disadvantages of fighting to end or to stop ED extending his stay in power beyond 2028. The two gentlemen have emphasized the legal or constitutional challenges that attempt has to face. In my view, they are forgetting we are dealing here with a regime that was able to carry out an electoral coup in 2008, in which many people lost their lives. According to some reports, 500 people lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands had their properties destroyed, they were beaten, they were raped, and were internally displaced. What we saw in 2008 is comparable to what we have seen recently in Tanzania. SADC and the AU at that time stepped in and denied ZANU PF political legitimacy, forcing the regime into a GNU. The same regime carried out the 2017 military coup. I think those were more serious challenges, politically, legally, and in every other respect. And yet the regime was able to carry those out. To say that the regime will be stopped or can be stopped from amending the constitution to extend Mnangagwa's rule, I think is pushing our luck. I believe if the regime truly wants Mnangagwa to stay in office beyond 2028, they will bulldoze their way in and get what they want. And one of the other reasons why I believe they can easily do that is the very fact that the referendum, unlike an election, will not be supervised by outsiders. A yes or no, in this case, would be 50% of the cast vote plus one. ZANU PF already controls the rural constituency electorate. They can easily rig, because in a referendum, you do not even need a verified voters roll. All you've got to do is produce your ID and you'll be allowed to vote. And you can vote in any polling station. The opportunity for ZANU PF to rig in a referendum are infinitely better than in an election process where SADC and the AU and other election observers will be there. So, in my view, those who think they can fight to stop ED extending his stay in office, I think they're just kidding themselves. The truth of the matter is, if he really wants, he can get it easily. But like I said earlier on in my earlier presentation, that this is a decoy. So if it doesn't happen, it could be either because of their own internal fighting within ZANU PF, because there are some people in ZANU PF who don't want him to stay, or he never wanted it in the first place. He just threw it in as a decoy. So that would be my argument. You are fighting a lost war. If you think you can stop ZANU PF extending Mnangagwa's stay in power, if they really want, they can get it. And there's nothing you can do about it.
I have a slightly different take on that. Because let's go back into history. We had the 2028 electoral coup, and after ZANU PF had their rerun and forced people and a lot of atrocities were done towards the citizens of Zimbabwe, SADC stood up and said, no, we are not going to recognize this nonsense. And that led to the birth of a GNU. And the GNU had a purpose. And unfortunately, that purpose was not served because of our opposition that forgot the real purpose and their role in that GNU. Fast forward, we had the military coup. That military coup could not have happened without people going out in the streets to support it, without the opposition giving it a blue tick. So you will find out that all these violations that happened, the opposition had a big role to play in. And I would say they afforded ZANU PF the opportunity to do what they did and get away with it. Now here we have a situation where it appears as though the opposition and ZANU PF are totally against each other for reasons I would best not say, but it seems as if they are not going to be fighting in one corner unless things change. So for ZANU PF to get away with it without the support of the opposition is going to be very difficult. So my take on, I say again, 2030 is going to be a mountain to climb for ZANU PF. And 2028 for the opposition is very difficult. And I will get into that later on.
The other advantage of focusing on stopping ZANU PF getting away with rigged 2028 elections is that this is the real fight. This is where real change will take place. If, for the sake of argument, ZANU PF succeeds in extending Mnangagwa's stay in office. And is denied political legitimacy because the people of Zimbabwe had focused on, if there are no meaningful reforms before 2028, we are not going to participate. The argument on that one is very simple. If you participate in a flawed process, as people did in 2013, 2018, and 2023, you are giving the process legitimacy. If the people had not participated in 2023 in their millions, SADC and the AU in their report had condemned that process. They would have had the opportunity to take it one step further and deny ZANU PF legitimacy. But when you look at the number of people who participated in that election, nearly 2 million voted for Chamisa. SADC had to say, well, if this is what Zimbabweans want, who are we to say to them they cannot do so? So in other words, the real fight is stopping these millions of the so-called Chamisa Chete Chete Brigade participating in a flawed process to give it legitimacy. Because if you do that, you will have given ZANU PF legitimacy. You would have given ZANU PF dictatorship the legitimacy. If you don't, then SADC and the AU will deny ZANU PF political legitimacy, as they did in 2008. It will not matter one bit whether Mnangagwa had succeeded in changing amending the constitution to allow him to stay in power. Because think of it as 2008. Mugabe had been sworn in as president. But when SADC and the AU refused to give the regime legitimacy, the dictatorship collapsed. The ZANU PF dictatorship collapsed. They were forced to go into a GNU where Mugabe's power was not the same power of the dictator. He was president of the GNU, not president of ZANU PF led government. The MDC leaders failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU, not because Mugabe was a dictator, but because he bribed them. That's different. So in this case here, the advantage of focusing on stopping ZANU PF getting away with the rigged 2028 election is that it will deny ZANU PF the opportunity to have the dictatorship. There will be no dictatorship post-2028 elections. And without the dictatorship, whether Mnangagwa is still the party leader and the dictator, it's irrelevant. Because dictators can only survive and operate when they have the dictatorship backing them. They are like fish. They cannot survive out of water.
And on that point, you know, since the formation of the opposition movement for democratic change, and as their name implies, they were, you know, to bring change, change to how things were being done, not a change in government. They were, at the very beginning, they were not interested in government. They were wanting to change how things were. But as they became popular, they saw the opportunity that, oh, hold on a minute, there's something in it for us here. You know, we could end up running the show. But my point is, if the opposition are to run and say, you know, let us address the problem with rigged elections, it would actually now expose them that they have been lying all along, that they have been incompetent, that they had been bribed into participating. Because the problem with rigged elections, we have been told numerous times, not just in 2023, but on numerous occasions, that you need to fix ABC for you to have free, fair, and credible elections, for you to have a chance of actually winning. They have been told. But because there are seats that are there to be won, there's 70,000, there's cars, there's allowances to be gotten, they participated regardless. So this is why you find the opposition are not eager on 2028, because it will expose them for who they truly are: greedy and incompetent. So this is why you find they have now found a common voice, because, you know, ED2030 does not have anything to do with, you know, reforming a system, but it's just a matter of, you know, defending something that is extremely difficult for Zanu PF to do. And now you find the likes of Monzora and then all those, you know, guys that had, you know, that weren't doing well. I mean, I'm judging from the 2023 elections. They didn't do pretty much well. I believe it was almost a dying horse anyway, you know. So now they have been, you find that they're being rejuvenated, a new breath of life. Let us now go back onto the scene and then prove to the people, where once we have won this, that, you know, we did this for you. Yet in actual facts, it was never meant to happen. So I think, you know, 2028 will expose. If they are to start fighting for 2028 free, fair, and credible elections, it will just expose them to say, hey, but these previous elections, you were saying you could win rigged elections. What has changed? Are you now being truthful, or have you come to your senses?
I think the other issue that must be considered here is, I'd like to mention it as a separate issue, but fighting to stop Zanu PF getting away with a rigged 2028 election is not a new thing. This is the issue that was raised by the mid-1990s, when the nation realized that as long as Zanu PF remains in power with all these dictatorial powers to rig elections, there will be no meaningful change in the country. The solution was to elect opposition leaders who will implement the democratic changes necessary to stop Zanu PF rigging elections. The democratic changes necessary to restore the people's freedoms and basic human rights, including the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. The party itself, launched by Morgan Tsvangirai and company, emphasized that point. They called themselves the Movement for Democratic Change. They failed to implement even one token reform in 25 years, including the 5 years in the GNU. So this is not a new fight. This is a fight that has been put aside ever since the GNU debacle. The MDC CCC leaders have not wanted to talk about democratic change, democratic reforms. Indeed, their 2018 particularly and 2023 campaigns were based on the argument that they can win the elections regardless of ZANU PF rigging them. But this comes back to the point I made earlier on, that if you participate in a flawed election process, in your numbers, you have got to accept that organizations like SADC and the AU will not step in and deny ZANU PF legitimacy. For the simple argument that they will be saying, well, if Zimbabweans themselves are happy with the process, then what can we do? So standing firm and saying, no, we are not going to keep on participating in flawed elections is at the heart of this fight for a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Zimbabwe has been independent for 45 years and counting, and in that period, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. The last 15 years, we have sustained that process by participating in a flawed process, knowing fully well that it is flawed. Knowing fully well that by participating, we are giving the process legitimacy. So this fight is not a new fight. This is a fight, we are only reviving the old fight that we should have carried out a long time ago. I'll go so far as to say, if MDC leaders had implemented the democratic reforms, particularly during the GNU when they had the opportunity to do so, Zimbabwe would be a totally different place. We would have had free, fair, and credible elections in 2013. We would not be talking about this. So the advantage here of fighting to stop ZANU PF getting away with rigged 2028 is that we are reviving and refocusing our minds on the old fight that has been put aside by the opposition because they wanted to hide the fact that they have failed to implement even one token reform. They don't want to talk about it. And indeed, in the present situation, the opposition see it as we cannot implement any meaningful reforms. So forget about stopping ZANU PF getting away with another rigged elections. All we can do is take up this false fight to stop ED extending his stay in office beyond 2028 as the big fight. It is not.
You know, for me, 2030 is just a wait and see game for now. You know, up until, I mean, on numerous times we've heard, you know, Mnangagwa come out and say, no, I'm not going past my term. but then his party has other plans. You know, of course, now you find there are opposition members that have already taken it to the constitutional court and so forth. I think that is, premature in the sense that you have to wait until they make a move. They can make a move in 2027. They can make a move whenever, and this again takes away the attention away from 2028. We can be fighting this battle, and ZANU PF decides to say, nah, we not ZANU PF, but President Mnangagwa decides to say, no, I'm not going to do it. And this is in 2006, 26, 27, about. You cannot then now go and address the problem with 2028. You have stopped 2030, but 2028 is definitely going to go. And again, I have said, we have not even addressed a single problem from what happened in 2023 and beyond, and going backwards. So we can for certainly say 2028 will be rigged. 2028 will be illegal. It will be a violation of the Constitution. So 2030 is actually there to take away our focus from 2028, which is the main thing, an election process that's supposed to be, that is supposed to meet international standards, where there's observers, where there is, it has to adhere to the Constitution. So again, I'm looking at it and saying, and up until ZANU PF makes the move where they are now attempting, right now they've said they want to, and I don't think there's a problem with somebody saying they want to. Because you cannot go there now, you want to sue ED. ED has got a lot of statements that are there in the public that he says he does not want. So you cannot sue him. Neither can you go and fight ZANU PF at their own meeting to say, we are going to try to do this. They're allowed to try. It's when they actually, start the process, that's when you can start doing the challenge. This is what I think. So it will just take away our mind for as long as ZANU PF wants and sees it is no longer possible to even start thinking about reforming for 2028. So it's either now you have to ask for a postponement so that you get your house in order, but which it can't. So you just have to go into 2028, rigged as it will be, favoring ZANU PF as it will be. So winning either way now, winning 2030 is a false start. You're just, pumping up yourself. I've done it. ZANU PF can be beaten. And you go into 2028, the real thing, and get massacred. So you're getting given false hope, a false belief that you can do, it's not even the impossible, it's the easy part. So again, I agree with you. 2030 is a sideshow to take away the legitimacy issue. And this legitimacy issue has been raised so many times. And ZANU PF will use 2030 for as long as they can, up until a point where it is no longer possible for us to even talk about implementation of any reform.
The other issue that I think most people should remember here is that even if, for whatever reasons, be it because the opposition were well mobilized, as Tendai BT would put it, tosangana kumakomo, kwanembudzia, cholocho, whatever, and you manage to stop Zanu PF extending Mnangagwa's rule. If you do not stop Zanu PF rig in 2028, you will end up with a Zanu PF dictatorship headed by a dictator. It may not be Mnangagwa. It will be somebody else, but a Zanu PF dictator, nonetheless. We should not forget one of the things that have been happening actually ever since this ED2030 was launched. The infighting in Zanu PF. We should not forget the likes of Blessed Geza when he denounced the whole thing as bullshit. Here he is on that very point.
Saka muno wina sei imchole wachinje.
Aiwaga. Mirani kutauri imwe zvinhu zvinoitika. Hani ndiri kutokutaurira. Kurauza kuti handina kupusaka because ndiri kutokutaurira utozviziva. You know, takapusaka ndisikakutauriri zvese. We'll deal with this situation at the appropriate time. But ndiri kutotaura kuti commander vaMnangagwa, right? Navachiwenga, handidi, right? Ngava dissolve political bureau. Tikwane isu, varizive chungu. Ngava dissolve cabinet. Inozinana kazembe, vana soda, vanani, hawambozviita vane kupaniwa. Vane kambamura, vanani. Why do you hate your comrades? Kune general, kune retired CIO vakawanda, kune retired commissioners of police and other senior officers vakawanda. Havadiwe.
Maybe the president is looking at capacity and capability.
Bullshit. Vana grade 7, and capacity and capability. Grade 7. What a beast you're going. Nasa it was Minister of State, Mangwana Provincial Minister. It's terrible. We are not apologetic about it. Turn out of Pinda, not out of the president, one was motor, what about you? Don't have my bodyguard.
But you've got your own cars. You've got a hotel at your house that you built in Sanyat. Why do you want all this?
I want to be rewarded as well. Not to be used like a political condom all the time. I'm not a political condom. And urkoda wanama hiya waya na wama.
In short, as much as those in the opposition would want to believe that fighting to stop ED extending his stay in office will change anything, the truth of the matter is it will not change anything. Because all it will do is stop one dictator, Mnangagwa, staying on beyond 2028. It will not stop the Zanu PF dictatorship juggernaut. It will continue. Because Zanu PF will rig 2028 elections. And let me rest assure you, as much as they can fight each other over who is to rule, everyone in Zanu PF knows that they must, at the end of the day, have a Zanu PF government. Because any other form of government would not benefit either faction. These people may fight among themselves But at the end of the day, as long as ZANU PF dictatorship survives, they know their interests are secure. So don't delude yourself into thinking that joining in the fight to stop Mnangagwa will be in the interest of the country. It's not. Because at the end of the day, we will still be stuck with the ZANU PF dictatorship.
I think one very, very important thing we must share is winning the 2020-30 battle against ZANU PF will not stop ZANU PF at all. They will get somebody else, and ZANU PF will continue. And ZANU PF ways of doing things will continue. So winning 2030 is just stopping one person from continuing, but not the organization. And we have seen, we stopped Mugabe and we put Mnangagwa. That did not change how ZANU PF operates. In fact, it made it even worse. Then we have changing, and our focus is on 2028. We have been warned and we have been given solutions to our problem. Solutions that will end ZANU PF dictatorship once and for all. 2028, if we participate as things stand, ZANU PF will rig those elections. And I think everybody, no matter you don't want to believe, you know deep down, ZANU PF is going to rig those elections. We have to be realistic. That is how they've been doing it. And they will continue doing it. They will not just stop. ZANU PF will rig 2028 and get away with it. So our focus should be to fight for the democratic reforms that are needed for us to finally end the curse of rigged elections. Finally have a meaningful say in who governs the country. So for me, I would say winning or losing 2030, ZANU PF will continue. But winning 2028 by implementing the reforms that are needed to ensure that we have free, fair, and credible elections, will put a final coffin, final nail on the coffin of ZANU PF. They cannot survive without winning and or rigging elections. Period.
I think one other aspect that I would like to emphasize here is that as much as I argued at one point that the MDC, the Movement for Democratic Change, was launched in 1999 in the hope they will implement the necessary democratic changes to restore the power of the people to hold those in government to account. One of the glaring lost opportunity was that the opposition did not do anything to restore the democratic right of millions of Zimbabweans, especially those in the rural areas. This is important Because without changing, restoring the power of the ordinary people, in this case, those in the rural areas, who constitute as much as 60% of the electorate of the country, nothing will change. I would like to play a video by Margaret Dongo, herself a freedom fighter during the Liberation War, and herself a former ZANU PF member of parliament. And then she became the first independent member of parliament in Zimbabwe, in post-independent Zimbabwe. Emphasizing this very point that ZANU PF is holding the rural electorate to ransom.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU PF will never have control over them.
It's very simple. Fighting to stop Mnangagwa extending his stay in power, whether you win it or not, is irrelevant to the 60% or so of the rural voters who are or have been turned into nothing more than medieval sects by ZANU PF leaders and their proxies in the rural area. Whereas fighting to stop ZANU PF getting away with rigged elections and forcing the regime to go into a new GNU will give the nation a fighting chance to implement those democratic reforms that will go a long way to restore the ordinary people, the ordinary Zimbabweans, right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country.
You know, the more I look at 2030, you know, even if like I said, it's the easy part, and the probability of winning is great. This, I mean, I believe once a victory has, you know, is ascertained, the opposition, unified as they are, because they're already unifying on this thing, they will tell the people, let us go and now finally end ZANU PF in the 2028 election. This has always been the whole thing, participating in 2028 in our numbers. And ZANU PF will go and crush each and every one of us there, because they will rig the elections. So 2030 is a setup to create false belief that 2028 we are unified. There's unity amongst us. The opposition is now back together. They have, where we are basically we're on cloud 9 because we have just stopped some great event and go in there just to get ourselves booted. 2030 is a lie. 2028 is the real issue, and Zanu PF are winning the real issue, whilst we are content to settling for the sideshow.
I would like to close by playing a video that helps to underline the lie behind 2030. To some people who may have forgotten, we should not forget that 2030 is based on the argument that Mnangagwa has done so much in terms of developing the country, that the country is going to be transformed by 2030 to become an upper middle income nation. At the present moment, the GDP of the country puts each of us, the citizens, earning $2,000 per year. To become an upper middle income nation, our earning has got to increase at least threefold to $6,000 per year. Mnangagwa came into office in 2017. There is nothing to show that the economy has improved. If anything, the economy is worse off. Corruption has become rampant. So this whole argument that he should be allowed to stay in office because he's doing well is a lie. And I think in this particular case, if we were to focus on fighting to stop him implementing the reform, staying on in power beyond 2028, we would assist him in getting away with it, in the sense that this is not where the real fight is. As I say, the real fight is stopping Zanu PF rigging 2028, is stopping the dictatorship remaining in power. This whole scenario of the lie about Zimbabwe doing well has been re-emphasized, if you want, a few weeks ago when Mnangagwa was giving his State of the Nation address. And he was reminded of his own earlier lie that he had solved the nation's energy problems. There will be no more power cuts in Zimbabwe. Here is the video reminding him and the nation at large of the reality on the ground.
Saka iko zvino magetsi avako, there's no more load shedding. Saka vachiona kana munhu akabuya achiti nyama yabora ine madzake, muti ngave naye nenyama yabora tigomupatsva. Kasongo yeye mumbali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala oh yeye kasongo mbona wewo kasongo mbona wewo mbali nanga kasongo mbona wewo songa libala oh yeah.
That is, in my view, the situation in Zimbabwe. We are just being led down another garden path. ED2030 is not where we should be fighting. But if we fight it, we'll let Mnangagwa and company get away with rigging 2028 elections and staying in power. That is where the real fight is. The question is, are we smart enough to realize and make the right decisions at last? That, to me, is the question here.
You know, during yesterday's discussion, Temba raised one, issue of desperation. You know, our desperation is there for the taking from both sides of the political divide. ZANU PF know that we are desperate and they will use that desperation. The opposition know that the people are desperate and they will use this desperation. Either way, this whole 2030 movement will not benefit Zimbabwe in any way. Stopping Mnangagwa is not stopping ZANU PF. We've been down this road before. We've done it with Mugabe. We said Mugabe was surrounded with thieves, and then we had to boot him out. Hell, lo and behold, we have got somebody also that surrounds himself with thieves, literally. The problem has not been solved. In fact, we could say it's arguably worse. The opposition know that they took their eyes off the ball, and most of them had seen their popularity dwindle. I mean, look, MDC, once a formidable force, recently they cannot even settle their bills. You know, now this here has given them a lifeline. You can now come back into the political space. We can unite and figure ourselves out. This leaves each and every one of us, the ordinary guys that are looking for hope from both sides. We're just being taken for a ride. Even though we all know how both these characters operate, we are not willing to open our eyes and to think for ourselves what is the best foot forward for us. This is why you find Yeza comes today, we are running with him. If this 2030 comes, we are running with him. If Shamisa comes back tomorrow, we are running with him. We have become like a ship with no compass, with no particular direction. We're just drifting along, going absolutely nowhere. 2030 is not going to get us out of the mess of ZANU PF. 2030 is just, even if we do win it, we'll just make sure that Mnangagwa goes and another Mnangagwa returns. We need to be focusing our energy on ending ZANU PF dictatorship. That is our only hope. And we have been told that is our only hope. Now I take you to the situation that happened in Tanzania. It's sad that the people, ended up losing their lives, but they stood for what they believed is right. You cannot give us shameful elections just because the constitution says give the people elections. The people want free, fair, and credible elections. Zimbabwe needs free, fair, and credible elections for us to get out of this mess. Just going there and casting your vote in rigged, flawed, illegal elections will not cut it, will not get us out of this mess. We have to know that. In as much as 2030 is defending the Constitution, 2028 needs to be defended as well. So it is now up to us, which one do you want to fight? You want to fight to end Mnangagwa, or you want to fight to end ZANU PF? Because 2030 will end Mnangagwa. 2028 will end ZANU PF. Choice is ours. Thank you.
I think there is one big issue that must be emphasized here. ZANU PF, Mnangagwa, as I said, is the one who threw in this ED2030 to draw the nation's attention away from the fact that he rigged the 2023 elections. It has worked for him because there was hardly any debate on SADC and the AU stemming reports on the 2023 elections. The regime is determined to keep this matter on the national agenda by hook or by crook. Its own party resolution, when it was initially passed in 2024 at the Bulawayo conference, when Blessed Geza a month later or 2 months later dismissed it as bullshit, the party had to quickly readjust itself and went on a spending spree, bribing mostly war veterans to support the resolution. By the 2025 party conference, the party reconfirmed that resolution. And the party has been pushing for it. And when the opposition tried to criticize it, the party has bombed SAPE's property, where a press conference was to be held by the opposition to criticize the ED2030. I believe that is part and parcel of the regime trying to make sure that the issue stays on the national agenda. In much the same way the regime was behind the wanton violence that accompanied the farm invasion between 2000 to 2015. The party wanted the land issue to be on the agenda and not free, fair, and credible elections. So they kept stirring up the fire, throwing more petrol in it to force the issue on the national agenda. They are doing the same again. So my closing remark is that the people of Zimbabwe must make up their own mind. What is it they really want to achieve? If it is just to stop Mnangagwa staying on beyond 2028, then yes, fight ED2030. But if it is to stop, to end the Zanu PF dictatorship, then we must fight to make sure that Zanu PF does not get away with a rigged 2028. It is too late to stop Zanu PF rigging 2028. They cannot implement any meaningful reforms now, but we can stop them getting away with a rigged 2028. And we should concentrate on that. After 45 years of rigged elections, we should, by now, know what it is really that matters here. Ending the Zanu PF dictatorship and replacing it with a functional democracy, or just stopping another dictator, but knowing fully well that if Zanu PF wins, we will have a different dictator. Repeating the same idiotic mistake we made in 2017, where we removed Mugabe, but only to replace him with another dictator. That is the nightmare scenario that we are facing here. Thank you very much. We have on the screen there a summary of the advantages and disadvantages of fighting to stop Mnangagwa extending his stay in office beyond 2028. We will, let me move that so that you can see also the advantages and disadvantages on the other side of the scale. And you can enlarge the list for yourself. And you may agree or disagree with some of us. But like I said, your comments are welcome. You can post them still even after the broadcast on the various medias that you are watching it on. But those who were able to join us, thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you'll be able to do it again in the future. Ben, I don't know whether you'd want to give your closing remarks.
Now, I think, you know, we have spoken about this, and I still maintain my position that 2030 will end ZANU, it will end Mnangagwa's reign, but it will surely not end ZANU dictatorship itself. So it's either we choose what we want. Do we want to stop Mnangagwa just like we did with Mugabe, and replace him with another, or we would want to stop ZANU PF in total. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'd like to remind those of you who are able to join us that in future, if you want to join us in the discussion, please use the link that is now being shown at the bottom of your screen. And we will use the same link every Saturday and Sunday. So even if you miss, just go back to the same link as before, and you should be able to join in. And during the week, we have got the same program, 6 o'clock UK time and 8 o'clock Zimbabwe time. And there you can join us with your comments. And we'll try to answer some of your questions and comments as we see fit. I'd like to thank our administrator there for producing the summaries of the advantages and disadvantages as we saw them. And if you have got any additions to make, please, like I said, post them to our comments. But with that, thank you again for joining us this afternoon or this evening. And I hope you'll be able to join us again in future. Have a good evening.